It's quite a common reaction, I think, to for when people first hear a sonification to think, oh, if only it was sweeter. Where's the melody? And it's like they're saying, can't you make it more like sweet music? And the answer is yes, I could make it like sweet music. I know what the techniques are. I can make you swoon. But like many things in life, you can't swoon all the time. And in other words, you can't be swept off your feet by it, by the sweetness of it. There gets a time when something which tastes of sugar stops being sweet and starts being damaging. Well, you go, well, I've had too much sweet. I can't deal with sweet. You need some sour in your life. One of the interesting things that we've experienced in our experimental work is that, because what we do is we set up situations in sonification and we use some sorts of sounds in one situation, other sounds, and so forth and so on. And then we use different sounds in the same experimental situation, and as well as testing people's ability to use the sound, we also ask them whether they liked it or not. And in many situations, there's a sort of inverse relationship between whether people liked it or not and how well it functions. In other words, the sweet sound often doesn't function very well. So that's a good question as to why that happens. It may be that there's a confusion about the sweet sound, like the funk. There's a confusion about that really what people are expecting from the sonification is to be made to feel nice. A bit like they confuse the function of the sonification for that type of what they expect from music. Some people don't expect that from music. Their sense of music is not that it's about making you feel nice, but that it's interesting and exploratory and unusual, and you put things together in a way which makes you think about the world in a different way. Some people are like that with music, more experimental if you like. And sonification with unusual sounds or with non-melodic structures they're more open to that. But the problem is that the basic problem is you have too much sweet, you don't taste it anymore. And so it's necessary to go to a place which is not nice. No, I hear this a lot. First of all, we need a sonification. Well, the first thing is the sound has to be nice. And my natural reaction to that is to say, okay, for how long does it have to be nice? What is the experience in what circumstances does the user experience this such that it has to be nice? If it's 3 times a minute and you have to listen for 10 days, this nice sound ends up mostly being crazy. It sends you crazy because it's like it's trying to pull at your heartstrings, if I could put it like that, too many times, and you stop responding. So it's this engagement of emotional engagement and intellectual or mental engagement. There's this balance between the two. That in sonification, sometimes you have to go to you have this word in English called gnarly. You have to go to the sort of awkward sound, the sound which isn't quite, it sticks out, it's a bit thorny. And then what happens is that even though it's not nice, it's not smooth, it's a bit rough, the brain grabs hold of it and can hear the structure of it. And when you twist the structure of that, the brain hears that. And the trick is to do it in a way that, well, it's not really a trick, but I call it a trick for the moment, is to do it in a way that doesn't involve a lot of cognitive load. So we have this other problem, which is that if you're producing a sonification for people to listen to over long periods of time, if you make it nice, then people get sick. Right? You get sick of sugar. You eat sugar all the time, you get sick. If you listen to sugary sounds all the time, you go, oh, it's too much, give me some hard sound. I suppose you'd say there's a type of music which responds like, punk music is a way, not nice music, right? But people listen to it because they're not interested in nice music when they're interested in punk. Then so that's one dimension of the thing. Give it to me, but don't give it to me nice. And then the other dimension is, what is niceness, and how do you define something which is not that? And then you can provide things which are in sound, types of sounds which are very high cognitive load. In other words, they draw your attention to them because of the nature of the physiology and psychophysiology. And this means you can't avoid them. So if you're doing a sonification with those type of sound, you better make sure that it's important, because you are saying to the listener, listen to this, listen to this, listen to this. My sense about it is that we need more sounds which will just sit there in the sound field, a bit like in the background, a bit anonymous. Eric Satie, the French composer of the turn of the 19th, 20th century, has this beautiful expression. He calls it furniture music. For me, sonification to work properly needs to be a bit like furniture music. Like if you go into a room and there's furniture, you can observe the furniture. But at some point, you're weary, you want to sit down. Then you find the piece of furniture that's suitable for what it is, that whether you want to sit down or lie down or whatever. Well, sound is like that too. You can have, sometimes it's sweet, sometimes not. Sometimes it has to function in this way, sometimes it has to function in that way. And sometimes you need to be able to say, I need to be in this room without any sense that that piece of furniture exists. In other words, it needs to go into the background. And then, so this is what you would call intentional perception. It's there when you want to listen to it. And what happens then, and that needs to be the whole thing needs to be low cognitive load. It's not jumping out at you, but it's being there. And when you need to listen, you can listen in. Then you can hear what's there. So you can't do it in a way that masks it. It's got to be there. It's got to be clear, and it's got to be open to you pulling it out with your mind. And so they're the sorts of things that I find interesting in sonification, ways of working. The cognitive load thing, mostly the high cognitive load comes through the use of pitch. Pitch is we're very geared into pitch. The height and lowness of the tone, but because we're geared into it, because the physiology is such that it goes straight into the brain. The brain is a frequency analyzer, and we do this whole thing with pitch. It's high cognitive load, and if you keep hitting the brain with pitch all the time, trying to do everything with pitch, then it becomes people become weary of it because you're working them too hard with it. So they're the things that interest me, is how to get that balance right. And I think the NetSon project succeeds in that extent, in that it gets that balance right. And that's partly because we've listened to it while we've been working on it together, and there's been people coming in and out of the space and going, this sound is driving the people upstairs. Say, I've been listening to that sound for 5 days, it's driving me crazy. You say, David, can't you make this sound more this and that? And being open to that in the design process. I'm not saying it's perfect now, and if I did it again, there's plenty more to do. But I think that the iteration for me in this project, one of the exciting things to do has been to go through that process of making the sound somewhere between the sweet and the unusual but bearable.